Buying up old stock from Harley and Indian dealers, Rat Shirk and Mike Hebert have a hoard of original parts that attract customers from all over the world. Indian and Harley each have a loyal following of supporters with differing views as to which is the better company and motorcycle.
Indian was crude. As far, I hate to use those terms, but that's the only thing that comes to mind. Instead of using a bracket that's spring-loaded and will accept vibration, they just made it heavier. Harley is all, if you look at a Harley horn, there's probably 15 pieces just to put a Harley horn together on a bike. It's all spring-loaded and shock-absorbent, to resist fatigue cracking. Harley is a much nicer product. I think it's just better engineered.
I think Indians were always far more superior than Harley. Indian usually had stuff a long time before Harley did. Indian started with suspension in the rear in 1940. Harley, it was like 57 or 58. Indian always sold a lot of bikes to the police departments. The biggest percentage of police officers were right-handed. So Indian always went with the process, if they used the throttle on the left, that way the officer could pull his service revolver and keep firing with the right while he was chasing somebody, because he still had his aiming hand or whatever on the right.
This four-cylinder Indian was beautiful, but complex to produce.
But even as far as even being smooth, even if you had your hand on there, that's about 50 miles an hour.
The trouble was that for a few dollars more, you could have 4 cylinders, a roof over your head, and take the family along too in a shiny new Ford. The 4-cylinder motorcycle was a rich man's plaything.
They never really said why they discontinued it. I think money-wise, it was an expensive motorcycle. Even in 1936, the Indian 4 sold for like $420. Which a lot of Fords were $500, $600 for a full-size Ford automobile. So it was kind of like the exclusive motorcycle. And I'd say price is what hurt them.
Perhaps the most famous Indian is the Chief.
This is a 1936 74 cubic inch Chief with the correct sidecar at that time, what they called the Princess sidecar. E. Paul DuPont, the president of the DuPont Paint Company, was also the president of Indian. So even like in 1936, they had 12 or 15 standard color combinations, but for $3.50 extra, they'd paint it any other color you wanted if it was available in DuPont paint.
Diversification and product variety were to contribute to Indian's downfall.
The interchangeability of parts is very limited on Indians. If you look in an Indian parts book, I think there was probably 14 different sets of gas tanks from 1937 up until 42 for their different models. Harley had 3 different sets of gas tanks for their models. Indian, they put too many changes, trying to update, upgrade, and they never did it. I think they just made things worse. It seems where Harley, they designed a part, if it worked very well, they kept it. The same ignition switch from 36 right up until the late 60s. Nice switch, worked. Very simple, foolproof.
Indian really suffered during the Depression, and after that, the war started bringing them back, but their tooling and stuff was in pretty bad shape, and they kept putting a lot of money back that they were making for post-war improvements, but they weren't getting the bikes done near as fast as what they should have been. And towards the end of the war, the government actually shafted them because they said we don't need any more motorcycles, and didn't buy the rest of the military bikes that they had contracted to buy or the parts.
While Indian's inefficient management failed to meet government deadlines, Harley's supply of simple and reliable machines set them up for the post-war boom.
In 1945, with the shortages of war material, you couldn't even buy a motorcycle from a dealer. To get one, you actually went before a war production board and had to prove that you needed it. It was either a police department, civil defense, or essential transportation. And to get the bike, if they approved it, it would come as is. I mean, very, very plain, very stripped down. They eliminated the fender trim. They eliminated any chrome option that you might have. They even came with synthetic tires. There's a lack of rubber. The grips were plastic. The kicker pedal was even plastic. They eliminated the rubber parts on that. the rubber footboards from the early 40s. They put steel on. So it was a very plain, simple bike that was basically your essential transportation. It was the bottom of the line, utility machine at the time. Very few of them survived. In fact, very few survived because there was very few produced. Very few people could meet the criteria to purchase one.
Fearing that American riders might at last desert the V-twin, in 1949, Indian abandoned the mighty Chief and decided that the future was in European-style lightweight motorcycles. The bike suffered from a lack of development, poor quality, and didn't sell. The Chief returned briefly in the early 50s, but by then, Indian had lost their customer loyalty to Harley.
Harley, what they did is they introduced an aluminum head, hydraulic lifters, eliminated probably 250 pieces that they didn't have to manufacture. Just a very simplified, very efficient type of a valve mechanism. They did it for the public's sake. It was a cleaner, quieter motor, and they did it from their own manufacturing standpoint, less parts. Styling was unchanged from 1936. So you bought this bike in 1948, you had a bike that pretty much essentially looked like it did in 1936.
The Harley cowboys had beaten the Indians, and from now on they would ride the range alone. By 1949, lavish color and chrome reflected the optimism of the times.
It was a boom time, and these were the perfect way to express yourself. I can imagine a guy fighting 4 years in the trenches or whatever, just fighting 4 years to get out and own a motorcycle. He was probably in heaven then.